I would stand up for myself, and if somebody would start to pick on me, I would fight back.
Yeah.
You know, I would be like, well, forget this, I'm going to, and then all of a sudden it was, okay, well, this kid's going to fight back. And now like there's 7 or 8 kids. So I would get chased home from school on a regular basis,
Wow.
But when the neighborhood changed, like and maybe my parents were good about this, but I never thought, oh no, it's because the blacks are moving in. But that was a big thing. Like the white flight was that was a huge thing. And a lot of it was, like my mom was kind of big into, she was doing some real estate stuff, but there were things that the banks were doing because they wanted to drive real estate prices down. But my grandmother that lived above us, Helen McGuff, so we all called her Honey.
Mm-hmm.
She said, when you want to go back to school, to Triton, she's like, I'll pay for you. About 11 o'clock, I thought, oh, cool, I'm almost done because I'm almost to the middle point and I feel like I've got my groove.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, okay, so I'll be able to finish this today. So, and then at 2 o'clock, I've gotten to the other side of the opening, and I'm thinking, oh, cool, I'm almost done. And I'm just painting away. I'm like, almost done. 3 o'clock, all right, I'm almost done. 4 o'clock, I'm almost done. Like I said, I'm kind of in that, at that, I don't want to say crossroads, but I'm at that point where like, okay, well, this stuff's gotta, like, I got to start making money, or, I got to start making enough so that I can get back out on my own. Being nice to people is going to be, 90% of the way to get someplace, I think. Just being nice and being respectful. There are going to be people that say terrible things. You just have to get to the point where you don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes the hardest ones are when it's like, somebody that you know and love. When they have the comment and it's like, ew, those are the hardest ones to get over. But then you have to remember, like, I'm making this for me, not for you.
We appreciate all the time that you have given to us. We try to bring the most interesting, captivating stories that help you understand how a person came to chase their dreams and reach their highest potential. But we need help from you. If you can please subscribe to YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast platform, we would really appreciate that. It would help us build our audience and our reach, and we would be able to continue to have the most incredible stories told to you so that you can understand that success and your higher self is only an inch away. We hope you're having a great day and enjoy the episode that you're watching.
500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Cause I see you. Hey. My name is Jesus Azteca 500 Sanchez, and today we have a special guest, Joe Abboreno. Joe Abboreno is a muralist that makes art that is very colorful, has a lot of nature involved, has a lot of animals, anthropomorphic in a sense. I ran into him while he was painting a mural at the Wonder Museum in Oak Park, and he shared a lot of knowledge with me. We had a really great conversation about art, about muralism. I was painting a mural at the Chicago Youth Boxing Club, and so I actually took time and sat down with him. He gave me his time, and we were having a really good conversation. I was like, hey, I got this podcast. Like, would you be interested in becoming a guest? And he agreed to come in and to be a guest. So everybody, let's give a big round of applause to Joe Abboreno.
Thanks for having me on. This is nice. All the people in the audience, it's crazy. You see them all in the corners of the studio.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's fun to be here. Pretty exciting. Kind of neat to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. You don't always do that. Sometimes it's usually just like writing it down in your journal. Like, what do I think today? And what about art? That kind of stuff.
No, yeah. And the thing
You
that
know?
I really love about like the conversation that we had then is that I was a teacher and I decided to stop teaching and to focus on my art. And so I got this commission to be able to make this mural. And, I just wanted to see if where I was pricing myself was the right price, like how to manage myself as an artist.
Yeah.
And you were really open with it. Knowledge. You
well-
were just like, hey, this is the way that you break down like what you're doing. If you have this, if it's outside, if it's inside, right? Like,
yeah. And I learned that from other muralists that were, open with me and telling me like, hey, this is how we do it, because otherwise you get stuck.
yeah, you don't know.
Art, it's so subjective. It's so subjective that you don't always know how to price something. Even with just your regular artwork on a canvas, who's going to say, okay, well, this is, I'm selling my 10 by 10s now for $250. But, to get to that price, sometimes there's a lot of work and heartache. Like, oh, is that too much? Is it too little? Like, because, you aren't necessarily in the same point financially that your patrons and your people that are backing you are at. So you kind of have to know, like, okay, well, this is how you have to kind of get to a price that makes you feel good about where your time is valued.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So okay, well, this took me this long and I'm going to put my price of $250 on it, and it's just going to be there until somebody pays for it.
Yeah.
You just
so that you feel
to,
good about the sale, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
You feel good about the work and the effort that you put into that that painting.
And then sometimes too, like
Or
once
the artwork.
if something's sat there for a while, you can say to yourself, okay, well, if they buy that and they want a deal on it, what can I bundle it with that'll help that price? Is there a way to say, okay, now the value comes back up? Like, okay, well, $250, but like how about like still $250, but I throw in some postcards, or I throw in some stickers, I throw in some, something extra, so that they kind of feel like they're still getting the deal, but you're not undervaluing your art or yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
That's one of the big things that we're going to go over as far as like things that our listeners are going to be able to really hone in on is how you price yourself, how you value yourself as an artist, how you approach making a mural on a wall. Like you were talking about doodle grids, right? And so we'll talk about all of those things. But before we do that,
sure,
let's talk about like what it was like. Like, how did you grow up, and where did you grow up, and what was it like?
Yeah, so I grew up on the west side of Chicago, basically just south of Menard and Division. So it was the Austin neighborhood.
Okay.
And my parents were both teachers. My father's an art teacher, but it was just like growing up in that neighborhood. There was the kind, basically at the time, playing outside was a big thing. Always played outside. I think we lived there till I was about 9. So like 1980, I think is when we moved. The neighborhood started to change.
Mm-hmm.
A house had been basically burglarized a few times, and it just got to the point where like we couldn't. My family probably would have stayed in the neighborhood, but it didn't work out. So so we moved pretty close. We moved to Oak Park.
Okay.
And then that was basically very similar in terms of like a youth basically rambling around the neighborhood. And I think back to like how far like we would go like on our bikes and stuff. Like I would ride my bike a few miles to get to the forest preserves, like in Thatcher Woods out by River Forest. And as a preteen, like teenager, and kids nowadays, you're lucky if you can like they go outside and walk down the block, or walking to school. It's just I think it's a different era. There wasn't as much. I don't think there was as much like fear put out there about like what's going to happen. Does that make
like
sense?
hey, be careful. Don't go on that side of the viaduct or anything like that.
Right. I mean, I think there was that. There was that a little bit as a kid, but not as much as there is I think today. And then plus the thing is we didn't have as many things to do inside.
Yeah.
I think.
And what years were this when you were riding your bikes?
So that would have been 70. Let's see, 70 probably 72 through like 80. Yeah, I never really stopped riding my bike around. So, but the grade school era would have been like 73 to like 80, 81, 82. 84, I was in junior high.
Okay.
Because of the book. Like 1984 was like, I kind of remember when I read it, because it was like at the time. So it was 1984. You got to read the 1984 book. So I'm pretty sure that was 7th grade.
Oh, okay, cool. George Orwell.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So because they wanted you to kind of get this idea of like what's going on in that kind of that story, which is bleak.
Yeah, for sure.
We're probably going through a lot of that
little
stuff
bit of that now, right?
Yeah. Probably important for people to read that book, but it's definitely not a. I don't know if it's necessarily like a feel good book. So,
it's definitely a grim book.
Yeah. So
as far as like technology and how it'll be your overlord,
right?
But so like the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about.
Well, I was gonna say under like so the show Stranger Things, like I would have been the age of the kids in the show.
Okay.
Like in terms of like so like those kids growing up, that would have been like exactly my era.
The time period.
Yeah. So I still have my Schwinn Stingray. I still have like some of those toys and stuff. Like Dungeons and Dragons, that's still a pretty big part of my life.
Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, and we'll talk about that, right? And so you were going through your bike from Oak Park, right? You lived in Austin. So you were cultured in diversity, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't you lived around people that weren't like you. What was that like?
Well, I mean, so as a kid, you don't really it's not even a thing really you think about, right? You're just like, oh, these kids down the block are fun. We just play. And but it was a very mixed neighborhood. So our next door neighbors were black. There was black people in the neighborhood, mostly white. There was a lot of Filipino in the neighborhood. So like the people across the street. But when the neighborhood changed, like and maybe my parents were good about this, but I never thought, oh no, it's because the blacks are moving in. But that was a big thing. Like the white flight was that was a huge thing. And a lot of it was, like my mom was kind of big she was doing some real estate stuff, but there were things that the banks were doing because they wanted to drive real estate prices down. And basically,
like the redlining.
Yeah, the redlining. And they would, because of that fear, they would actually hire people to walk through the neighborhood that seemed, well, I think they would hire black people to walk through the neighborhood and make it seem like, oh no, like the neighborhood's changing.
Wow.
And so we were, like I said, the last year, our house was robbed a few times. Mostly it was just somebody broke into the garage or somebody broke into the back porch and stole bottles or something. Right. Mm-hmm. But we went on vacation to San Francisco and we came home, the house was empty.
Wow.
It looked like there was just like piles of like junk, but empty.
How did you feel?
Well, as a kid, it was like, I guess some of my stuff must have still been there. So there were some like kids' toys and stuff that were there, but I can just remember like, oh, there's no furniture, the TV's gone, all of the stuff is gone. And as a kid, it was just like, man, what, like couldn't really figure out what happened. But that's where, like, I think like the people in the neighborhood, because of that white flight, they just thought, oh, the Abborenos are moving and they're just leaving in the middle of the night. Because people would move in the middle of the night. They wouldn't tell anybody. Like you'd see them one morning and be like, hey, how you doing? And then gone.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they just figured, oh, that was it. But so somebody with a moving van parked in front of our house, emptied it, and then.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And
so
then,
the people who burglarized your house, they figured like, oh, the Abborenos are just going somewhere.
They're just moving out of the neighborhood.
Anything. Right. They didn't like call the police or anything because they just figured that you were moving.
Right. And didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
And then they actually used our house to spy on the people across the street. And then they attempted to start robbing that house, but they had a bigger extended family. So like I think like either one of the teenagers came home or somebody was like a college student had come home and basically spooked them out of it. But they used my dad's ladder to kind of break into their house.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't steal much, and they used my telescope to basically spy out. Watch the house. So they were probably there a couple days.
How did your parents feel about that? Like, I imagine they felt like...
I'm sure they felt pretty devastated.
Yeah.
But I was, like I said, I was probably maybe 8 or 9, but you just kind of don't really know much other than, oh my gosh, the house is empty.
Yeah.
Right.
And then what was it like to move to Oak Park?
That that was pretty cool. I mean, there wasn't a huge difference in the neighborhoods. I mean, other than at the time, there wasn't the same Filipino, quotient. So it was mostly white kids. But it was pretty good. I think the thing that happened was, like, I started to get bullied at school, and that was a pretty big thing. Like, it's like one of those things you don't really want to remember. You want to remember the happy stuff. But I mean, anyway, it was a big thing. So I would get, like, that was probably 3rd through 6th grade, where, like, we were at one school, and I basically I was getting, like, it was the older kids too. It wasn't like even the kids in my grade would pick on me a little bit, but they were still friends, right? It was like, I don't know, like, not necessarily good-natured ribbing because you're kids, so you don't necessarily know what the good-natured part of it is, but I don't think it was, like, malicious. But then like the older kids, for whatever, I think it was because, like, I would stand up for myself, and if somebody would start to pick on me, I would fight back. Yeah. I would be like, well, forget this, I'm going to, and then all of a sudden it was, okay, well, this kid's going to fight back. And now, like, there's 7 or 8 kids. So I would get chased home from school on a regular basis.
Wow.
So that wasn't too much fun. But
so you didn't have like your experience in Oak Park as far as being a student was not like the best because you had like this overarching, like, I think it was bullying.
I think it was the culture of the school that I was going to.
Yeah.
So
what was the culture there?
So I mean, it was a Catholic school, and I think it was just like this. I think it was just, people, whatever, like, kids will be kids or whatever. They just would ignore you a little bit. And then there was thinking back to it, I think the teachers were also sort of like, okay, well, I'm doing this, like, kind of hands-off-ish. Like, okay, well, we'll deal with these kids when they get in. Like, we won't open the doors till 8 kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, and because of that, actually, I can remember times where it might have been, I know there was a couple times where I want to say 20 below, but I think it was probably like 12 below, where the kids are just waiting outside in line and they won't open the doors because it's not time to open the doors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right.
So the teachers are just there to get a check, pretty much.
Right.
Like, they don't really care about the students necessarily. They're just trying to teach you.
Right. Right. So then what happens is you get the bullies kind of start to run the joint. When I switched to junior high, like 7th and 8th grade, were a lot of fun. I there was a lot of friends, different kids. Wasn't getting bullied the same way.
Nice.
So, so that was cool. And then high school.
What did your parents, just to rewind, like, did you tell your parents that you were being bullied?
Yeah.
And your dad was a teacher as well, right?
Yeah.
Like,
both my parents were teachers, actually.
Okay.
So, with the bullying and stuff, that's why I switched schools, like, in 7th grade. And I think my sister had to finish through till 6th. Like, there was something about, like, they didn't have a great opinion of public schools. And I think that had to do with, like, being in the city.
Yeah.
But then the Oak Park public schools are really good.
Yeah.
So they just it took them a while to kind of get beyond the
trust.
Yeah. And I feel bad about this now, but sometimes when you're bullied, you become a bully,
Mm-hmm.
And I think I definitely probably bullied some people. You get to a point where, you're like, you've been bullied so much, you're just, like, glad to not be the bully.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I've done that too.
And like, thankfully, I'm at a point now where I can, like, see that stuff, like, in what I was doing. So I kind of, I don't know, I guess forgave myself a little bit for it, but it's still, like, something I'm aware of, like, oh, am I doing that again? Or is it that kind of thing? So.
And the hierarchy of things, right? Like,
yeah.
Now I'm the top dog.
Right. Right. And for me, like, football was my thing that kind of made the big shift, and I think some of it was, as a kid, I had a really bad temper as a kid, and it had to do with, like, basically having undiagnosed asthma. Like, my folks would just say, "Oh, he's got a wheeze,"
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, everybody smoked. I mean, it wasn't like nowadays where, like, your friends, like, go outside, and if they smoke, they just go outside and they're smoking outside. This was, everybody smoked inside. Your parents smoked. People smoked in cars. And then.
No, I remember, man. My mom
yeah.
was a change. My mom actually passed away from lung cancer, and I remember going to St. Rita. So that's the school that I went to. I had a Letterman jacket, and those are made out of felt.
Oh yeah,
or like wool. And I walked in, and the smoke of the house, like, bled into the coat.
Yeah.
So when I walked into school, one of the priests or somebody smelled me, and they were like, "Hey, you've been smoking. Go to the office." So I went to the office, and I was sitting there for a little while. They called my mom, and they were like, "Hey, Jesus has been smoking," and I was like, "Yo, I don't smoke." And they were just like, "Well, how come you're?" So then they started discussing with my mom, and they figured out that my mom was the cause of me smelling like smoke.
Yeah.
So it was just like smoke was constantly around me when I was younger. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so with asthma and being probably like, you know, a little bit of allergic to it, like there would be days where you'd go through the whole day, think you're okay, but this, like, basically, you know, not being able to breathe well all day, like, wears on you.
For
so
sure.
So then, you know, by the end of the day. Anyway, so with football, like, I think, you know, I became like able to be more athletic. So I was exercising more, doing all this stuff. And I had the benefit of the violence of football. Really, I mean, so I ended up with football because my mom didn't want me to play football. She's like, you know, no way. So I went out for soccer, but soccer only had JV and varsity. So only juniors and seniors, really. But I mean, but you had to be really good. You could make it as a freshman, but you had to be good.
Okay.
So I got cut, and I still wanted to do sports. I still wanted to be like my friends were doing sports. I'm like, I want to do it. So my mom took pity on me and let me go off for football. And then that was when I discovered like some people have talents for you throwing a ball, catching a ball. I found out my talent was just knocking people down,
crushing people.
right. So, and then it was like, oh, and then I'm, you know, at the time too, overweight. So it kind of all worked
So you were a lineman?
Yeah, I was a lineman.
Okay.
So yeah.
Offense or defense?
At the time,
both.
Yeah, both. And then, but when I was a junior, then I was only defense.
Okay.
So, but it was, you know, the kind of thing where you're just like, okay, well, I'm just this little fire plug kid. Boom.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, what were your relationships like with your parents, and what's your family structure like?
Well,
do you have like brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah, so I've got a younger sister. She's 2 years younger. My little brother is like, what do you call it? A happy accident. He's 12 years younger than me.
Nice.
It's like all of a sudden in junior high when your parents are like, hey, you're gonna have a new sibling. What? Okay, great. You know, it was pretty cool. And for him,
so you grew up with your sister.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you had the little brother.
And then all of a sudden the little brother. So, and then I think that might.
You're the oldest?
I'm the oldest.
You're the responsible one.
Right. But I think that was, you know, now that I think about it too, that was probably part of the reason why too I started to not lose my temper as much.
Sure.
Because you got all of a sudden you're sort of you become the babysitter a little bit.
So you're an artist, obviously, and your dad is an artist as well. He was an art teacher.
Yep.
How did that? Was there a tutelage between you? Did you admire his skill? Like how did you connect to that?
Yeah. So as a kid, I mean, I can remember him showing me how to draw like ellipses so that you can get like a glass of water to look like a glass of water and not just be a lot of people will draw the ellipse at the top and then the bottom becomes a flat line.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember him showing me how to do that and showing me some tricks as to like why there really isn't any flat surfaces, like the world is round kind of stuff like that you can do just by drawing ellipses. And, you know, the farther away you can it's really obvious to see the curve then, but like it's obviously the flat table. But so I can remember him doing that kind of stuff. And then they were always good about, you know, making sure like I had like the tools I would want, you know, a sketchbook or pencils, that kind of thing. Those were always around.
Mm-hmm.
But as growing up, my dad painted large paintings, but they were abstracts. So flat color area abstracts, very similar. Well, I wouldn't say like too similar, but Frank Stella's earlier work.
Okay.
You know, where it's these big abstract shapes, hard edge lines. So that was what he painted, like basically my whole, you know, growing up. So I never really felt like, oh, I have to like emulate his stuff, if that makes sense. Now one of the things though, one of the big influences is at one point, I don't remember, I have to look, it's still at home, I think, but he did a pencil drawing of a dragon. Mm-hmm. Really intricate, really well done. And I'm not sure, but that like, there was one of the things like, oh, cool, I want to do that. And then eventually like going to different schools, like I got away from like wanting to do that. There was a big push for like, oh, you got to graduate and have a job. So it was like, okay, you got to go into graphic design, visual communications. That has to be your thing. And I kind of liked it. But when I started, I went to Northern Illinois for 2 years.
Mhm.
So basically, I think 89 or 90 through like 91 or 92.
Mhm.
And visual communications at that time was cut and paste, literally cutting with scissors, gluing stuff down. It was still back in the original way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do a markup or a layout. It was all glue and scissors. And I don't like that. It was like the precision of that kind of drove me nuts. Like there's something about like, okay, am I going to cut this edge straight? I don't want to like take, the time that you need to. So
Yeah,
I
like
kind of
lacks freedom. It's very mechanical.
Yeah, so I kind of got disillusioned with that a little bit, like at the time. And then what happened was at the time also I was kind of discovering alcoholic beverages. So I was basically partying too much and then not going to school enough. So I was basically taking 5 classes, flunk 1, take 5, flunk 1, and then you just can't keep going to school that way. You're wasting money. So, and then it was the okay, if you want to graduate, you got to have a job. And my dad didn't really want me to be an art teacher because he felt like
Jaded?
like, well, probably, because he'd been doing it for a while. And so I also liked gym. So I thought, okay, cool. I'll be a PE teacher. Then I can do my art on the side and then be a PE teacher. And so I went to UIC for 3 years, and that I did okay, but it was the same problem. Like it didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So for that was, for there, I went basically 3 years, and then like the last semester just flunked everything. It was just awful. Like I was depressed sitting in my car, just basically like, what's the point? Not putting my seatbelt on purpose. Like, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandmother that lived above us, Helen McGuff, so we all called her Honey.
Mm-hmm.
She said, when you want to go back to school, to Triton, she's like, I'll pay for you, basically. So
Nice.
I was driving out to, I don't even remember the name of the place, but I drove out, filled out basically an application to become like the mailroom guy. And then that's when I realized, okay, this is not at all what I want to do. So I went back to her and basically started at Triton, and then got my advertising art computer design degree. And then, so in the time period of like those 5 years, it went from cut and paste to all of a sudden people are using Macs. So if you wanted to do the paste up stuff, it was all Macintosh related. And at the time, it was Quark Express, Photoshop. I remember they just introduced layers to Photoshop. So It was like Photoshop 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Illustrator. Those were like the big things. So we were learning all that stuff. And so it was just kind of a neat thing to all of a sudden be like, oh, I don't have to cut and paste. I can actually just make the stuff up in the thing and see if it works. And so that was pretty cool. And then, so I'm like really thankful for her. I think that like one of my biggest regrets actually is not going to the, like graduating, not doing the walk to get my diploma.
Ooh.
Like,
Okay.
And the reason I regret it, not so much, I think at the time, like a social anxiety or whatever, but like I should have done it for her, right? Like I should have done this, like, because that was like the whole reason I did it was, was able to do it was because of her, like my self-image and my self, like, what's the word? I don't know. My self-image was terrible.
Self-efficacy?
Yeah. How I like looked at myself and how I felt about myself in terms of like interacting with other people was awful. And actually that continued up until recently, really. There's a book by Mel Robbins called The High Five Habit.
Yeah.
And,
you high five yourself in the mirror.
Right. And for whatever reason, like that, like really like hit home.
Yeah.
And because I look in the mirror and be like, oh, you're such a, I don't know if you can swear, but such a, you're such a, fat piece of bleep, 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 and I would say that every time I looked in the mirror, all the time, like there'd be horrible stuff like, oh, it's disgusting. You're off. And that was the voice in my head.
Yes.
And, it takes a while to realize that you can change that voice in your head,
Sure.
So basically, like talking about bullying, like I'm bullying myself, like it was, up until, so I was like, when did I read that book? It came out only a few years ago. So I was probably like 49, 48, 49 when I read that book. And so it's been really recently where I can say like, oh, I look in the mirror and go like, oh, well, you probably need to get your hair cut, or,
No, I mean, that's
right?
beautiful though. That's beautiful because, often we criticize, just like we criticize other people, we criticize ourselves way harsher.
Oh yeah.
For me, being part of the program, like, we were discussing off camera, right? Like, being part of the program is like coming to terms with what happened and how you're improving yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so you could look at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is what happened, and totally like break yourself down. But it's really about like what you're doing and what you feel about yourself now, and being comfortable in your own skin. I think that this body that we have, and one of the reasons why I box is like this is our spaceship.
Yeah.
For this lifetime. And so in this lifetime, I want to learn as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I want to be able to share as much as I possibly can. And this body allows me to do that, and this mind and everything about me. And so it's important to give reverence to the fact that your heart is beating right now, that you're able to see, that you're able to listen, that you're able to smell, right? Like,
things I took, I mean, those are things I took for granted. I'm because I was so like terrible in my head, there was, things that I would have done just because, okay, well, this makes me feel better. That's why, overeating, just you think, oh, well, what am I going to do? I'll just eat this bag of Doritos because now I'll feel better, and then you're like, oh, so then all of a sudden you get to a point where I think it's at 50. I think when you get to 50, there's definitely something that says, hey, your warranty is up and you need to have things checked. You need to make sure like you have to take better care of yourself.
For sure.
I mean, it probably have something similar happens at 40, but 50, that was definitely like well,
yeah, that's when you have to like start taking medication. If you need to take medication, you're going to be taking it pretty much for the rest of your life type situations.
Right. So you just have to go, okay, well, make sure I can do this and check in and make sure everything's good. So thankfully, like everything's good, but I have some things that because I, abused myself with sugar and carbohydrates and things that, like I have to take better care of myself. And then, so I'm in kind of in this process of healing now, like where there was a point where, I mean, I wasn't, able, like I'm still like not great, but like time where I wouldn't have been able to do the mural because I couldn't get up and down on the ladders or stuff, stuff like that, just because, okay, well, I can't do it because that's just too much. Right. Yeah. And so at least I'm in the point now where I'm able to heal a little bit and, hopefully get to the point back where I used to be, 10,000 steps a day person.
Yeah, I mean, you were a lineman.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
You were grinding it out.
Right. So yeah, but you at a certain point though, when your work is the activity level at work is basically clicking a mouse. You run out of like how much energy am I burning off? How many calories am I burning off? The clicking of your finger doesn't take much. And you get to a point where like you're still eating like a lineman. Right? If that makes sense. So you're still going, okay, you know what? I'm going to eat a pound of pasta and I'm going to have some carb. Yeah. I got a carb load because I'm going to work out, which it isn't really true, I guess, but whatever. Yeah. We don't need to talk about health stuff,
No. Yeah. But what is it like to know that you're healing? Because it's not, you weren't talking about just healing physically. You were talking about healing mentally. What is that like?
It feels great. I mean, it is really a thing. I think where you can see where you were and kind of where you're going. You get a better idea of, okay, what can I do today? And what, how am I going to improve myself tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And that's really an empowering feeling. Like, what can I do tomorrow? Like, okay, well, I'm going to have it tomorrow. Well, that's good. Mm-hmm. And then, it's great. I think the first couple times when I started doing the high five habit, mm-hmm. Like I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, the voice isn't gone. I mean, I don't know if it ever really goes away completely, but it's definitely like to the point where you can just go, oh yeah, whatever, dink, and just flick it away.
Like check it.
You can just be like, hey, that's not true. Like you can say to yourself, that's not true, right? Mm-hmm. You can, and whereas before it'd be like, oh man, this is awful. This is all terrible. And then you're like, oh, and then it's worse. Cause then you kind of look in the mirror and you're like, okay. And then the voice in your head speaks up and then, and you just get more and more depressed. And, now it's like the opposite happens almost. Like it's like I can hear that. If you hear that voice, then, you just really can talk back to it, which is great. And then that's the thing too, is not only does it didn't happen so much with my artwork. Like that voice wasn't around too much, but it's definitely there. That's what's the word? The phrase, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Right. Like the imposter syndrome, like that is a real thing. And it's still, I mean, that is one of those things too, that you still have to recover from. And that it is getting used to saying, okay, well, that's not true in your head.
Yeah,
like when you get those negative, you get the negative thing like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah,
nobody's
like you
gonna
faked your
like
way
this.
all the way up here, and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, nobody's gonna like this. Why'd you even paint this? Oh, you just wasted money on a canvas, and you wasted money on paint, and you wasted, and then you're like, nope, not true. So and then the thing too is sometimes it just takes a little while to find your audience.
Yeah.
Right. So you've created this thing, and you're like, man, I love this. And then like you have to, and then the thing is you have to realize like you will find the person that loves it too. It's just, you got to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's part of the reason, like agreeing to your podcast, it's all of the stuff like posting your stuff to Instagram, basically I have a website, but I got to get into the habit of writing my blog. I've got a YouTube channel. I have to get back into the habit of filming myself, make art.
Yeah. And
sharing that. And the more you share it, the more people are going to see it. The more you put yourself out there, if you don't put yourself out there, your stuff's just going to be in a closet. You're going to be looking for space like, oh, well, let me get rid of these old ones, throw them away and put new ones in there. Whereas you put that stuff out there, you're going to find the person that wants to, share in your experience, basically.
I had a professor, and that professor was just like, I always felt weird about selling my stuff.
Yeah.
Because it was like, they were my babies.
Right.
How am I going to sell my babies? And he was like, you don't have enough babies then.
Right.
He's like, make more babies.
Yeah.
And when you make more babies, or you make more paintings, or you make more art, you're going to have so much that you're not going to be able to store it, and you're going to have to sell it.
Yeah.
And so it's like something that I'm trying to live up to now, where it's like, now I have to start building it up.
Some of, like for me too, like some of that is there's a little bit of you have to support yourself, right? And so you have to like create these things and figure out like how am I gonna pay these bills off? How am I gonna pay for these things? But then at the same time you're like, I want to work for myself,
sure,
right? And not do that stuff. But yeah, with teaching, I mean, I think so I do still teach. I have one of my friends' kids I teach on a Zoom call. They're based out of Florida, so it's hard to meet in person.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things I like coming to it from this side as opposed to, I don't know if I would want to be in a school district.
Yeah, it's different. It's different when you have children that want to learn.
Yeah.
Rather than children that are being put in your classroom because they need that credit.
Right.
And so then you end up in just situations where it's like the kid doesn't want to be there. There's no other place for the child to go.
Yeah.
And they're making your life.
Yeah. I mean,
difficult.
Right. And so it's fun having like the one student, because the thing too is you can, depending on how a lesson's going, you can shift on a dime and be like, okay, well, you can tell like the kid is not either into it today or there's something else bothering them, but then you can switch from, okay, let's draw this to let's draw this. Mm-hmm. I think drawing's probably the thing that's like the most fun, I think, to teach and play around with.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different styles and stuff. So today we're going to play around with realism. Mm-hmm. Today we're going to cartoon.
Or gesture.
Yeah, gesture drawings. Or we're just going to say, okay, let's put on some music and then just draw to the rhythm. Like what are you drawing today? Nothing. We're going to scribble this out, right? And we're just going to have fun listening to like pick your favorite songs. Pick this. Okay, let's draw to that. So with my student, I've been exposed to a lot of Taylor Swift recently that I wasn't necessarily exposed to before.
What do you think of it?
It was fine. It was good. I mean, I wouldn't, it didn't make it into my rotation, but I could, it was definitely, I could tell why, like, she liked it.
Mm-hmm.
So we, that's one of those things, put that music on, and then you still have this shared experience of, okay, what's the rhythm? Oh, what's this? Let me listen. Okay, here's what the words are.
Is there anything that you saw growing up that you wanted to change in your adulthood?
So the biggest change that, like, I have been able to make is that talking about that high five habit. And that was probably the biggest thing, like getting that the negative self-talk to become just a whisper, right? Or just a thing that, basically, oh, I can bully him now. Like, I'm able to do that. That's probably the biggest change that I'm glad I was able to make. Now, I mean, as a kid, I think as a kid, there weren't too many things that I never necessarily wanted to change. Obviously, bullying, I didn't want to be bullied. But there weren't too many things where I thought about, like, oh, I wish this was different, right? I was really in a lucky situation where, like, both my parents, they're still married. Pretty, loving household, grandparents that cared about me. Mm-hmm. My grandfathers, though, they died young.
Have there ever been like a pivot or a moment, a fork in the road where you were just like, I needed, as far as your artwork, like, I'm going to dive into this artwork or I'm going to dive into my gift and, like, really hone in on it?
I think I kind of feel like I'm still there. Like, I'm still at that pivot.
Yeah,
right?
let me know about it.
So I mean, so I worked for a company, like an environmental consulting firm, for almost 20 years. Sure. Got laid off. And then you kind of become disillusioned with, like, do I want to work for somebody else again? I want to work for myself. So, and then I was starting to do that. And then COVID happened. All of a sudden, like, I was going to different gaming festivals, gaming conventions. Like, so, I was starting to sell my artwork pretty well, and things felt like, oh, cool, this is all happening. Like, oh, I can see it. Like, you can envision in my head, like, okay, I'm going to be able to set up a shop at Gen Con. I'm going to be able to do this and that and this. Sure. And then all of a sudden they all closed. They all shut down because the world shut down.
COVID.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
And so then it was like, oh man, I still want to do this, but how am I going to do it? So because of that, though, I was able to access what I had saved from my 401k. And so basically I killed that. So I basically lived off of that for a few years to just try and get things going.
Sure.
And so the good thing, the best thing I did with that money was I traded in my old car, which was a Ford Focus SVT, like, hatchback. So it was tiny. Mm-hmm. And I picked up a Ram ProMaster City, the mini cargo van, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's been pretty huge now because I can actually take that to conventions, load it up with stuff. Even my dad and I, we actually had a shared show experience, which was really pretty cool. So it was there's a program called Rendezvous Arts, mm-hmm. and what they do is they have an artist come in and a music group, and they basically have 3 locations, and so they set up for a night. The music group plays, and then everybody can kind of look at your art. And you kind of get to meet all these different people. So it's basically like the first show was Dixon, Illinois, and then Lake Forest, and then finally the last show was in Ravenswood. Mm-hmm. And so having that van, like, basically meant that we could actually carry my stuff. We actually ended up building a basically kind of this haphazard, like, wooden floor halfway up the middle of the van, so that we could have a place to where we could balance paintings. Because my dad's artwork is mostly large format. So 3x4, 36 by 48 kind of stuff. Okay. Like quite a few of that. And then that's kind of like the largest. And then, down in size. So I have a few pieces like that too. So, but we had to basically go, like, how do we stack these in? Everything's like, face up, and then like like a piece of like cloth or sheet. And then you've got basically face to face, back to back. Mm-hmm. So that they don't scrape each other.
Yeah. If you could tell yourself something as an adult to your child self, mm-hmm. I know you mentioned self-efficacy, self-esteem.
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that. Like, what kind of advice would you give yourself if you were a child? If you could flash back and like kind of peer in and whisper into your child you.
Well, I think I would do the things like that teaching my young self about looking in the mirror and high-fiving myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know it's one of those things that I hate to keep coming back to it, but it was so powerful for me. Like if I could do that, that would be one. And I would probably also talk about like, hey, you don't have to carb load. You don't have to get, and so there's that addiction to carbs. If I could have started like addressing that sooner, I think I'd be in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
That and blood sugars and all that stuff, basically making sure like, hey, you don't have to eat these things. They're not, they're not really making you happy. Like they are for a little bit, but you don't need that piece of chocolate cake.
Yeah. No, I love sweets as well, man.
And it wouldn't, so the problem for me was it wasn't like a piece of chocolate cake. I don't have that. Like, I think there's people that can moderate themselves, right? And then there's people that have to be abstainers, right? And I'm definitely a person that has to be an abstainer. I can't be like, oh, well, just have one chocolate chip cookie. No. If there's a bag of chocolate chip cookies in the house and they are open, they're going to get eaten, right? And it's like this. So it's that kind of stuff where you just have to, like, I have to, if I want to cheat, which I do, I have to say, okay, it's this day, and I will cheat that, and then I have to have enough, like, basically, what's the word? I want to say confidence. I have enough like willpower, right, to say like, okay, the next day, no, not going to have any of that day.
Yeah. So
and when I do that, then I'm able to do it, because I've tried some diets in the past where it's like, okay, well, you can be good for 5 days and then you get a cheat day, or good for 6 days and you get a cheat day. It doesn't work because like the cravings never went away.
Yeah.
I was never able to say, well, nope, I don't really need to have pizza on a Friday.
No, yeah,
right?
For sure. No, yeah, I do that as well, but I do it like when I'm boxing. I have to make weight. So like right now, I'm in the process of making weight to fight, and so I'll take a cookie.
Yeah.
And I'll eat little nibbles of the cookie, so it feels like I'm eating.
Oh man,
like 10 of them.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
Question: like, how did you go from how did you transition from being an artist to a muralist? Like, I'm glad you asked that, because that was one of the questions I thought about. I don't know if I have really. So I think of myself as an artist first. Sure.
And if the opportunity arises to paint murals and paint more murals, I will. Like, I don't have I don't necessarily.
Yeah, divvy it
up. I'm not necessarily trying to chase murals.
Sure.
To do, right? I mean, maybe I should, but I think it's more of like, if I have an idea and it'll work as a mural. Like some of the murals I've been doing mostly have been through like word of mouth. Like somebody's like, "Oh, Joe, I like your stuff. This will work great on." For instance, the North Avenue mural in the front of Wonderworks. That one was because of like my style of stuff. I still had to submit work and still had to get approved.
Sure.
But and then because I've done other murals in the past, it made it easier because I knew like X, Y, and Z. Like, I know I'm going to need this and this to do it. So, but I didn't necessarily chase that down. People said, "Hey, you should probably apply for this, because that's what they're looking for, your stuff." They don't know they're looking for your stuff, but they are looking for your stuff.
Yeah.
So mostly I've been doing like the mini murals, but the two big ones that I've done have both been because of that. Yeah. So the Oak Park Arts Council has been kind of great in that respect. So, and
then how did you develop the style? Because your style is like really colorful.
I think it's so I always liked cartooning. Mm-hmm. Like, I've always liked, being doodling, comic-y characters, right? So, and then comics too. So some of them, like the drawing style, started with like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. It's this book. I think you can still get it on Amazon for like $10 or like $10 to $15. It's paperback. That kind of shows you how to break characters up into shapes. So the ovals and the swirling, so you can get kind of real animated, poses.
Sure.
And then, that's kind of how it's been. So, and I think I went to a Comic-Con, and there was an artist there that showed how he colored in Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
So then it became like, okay, well, these like basically solid colors. And I think that kind of goes back to my dad's work too, which his early work was all just solid colors. It's like, okay, it's solid colors, but then I want to also introduce, shadow shape. Oh, now this all of a sudden reminds me. Oh yes. The first job I had out of college was for a pull tab lottery ticket company. And so basically we were drawing, jackpot symbols. Right. So you're drawing basically cherries, pineapples, all these different characters, and they had to work. So you draw them out first, like say 4 inches by 4 inches, but it had to work at like, a centimeter by a centimeter. So you're basically, you get these things and you're drawing all day with like Sharpies, like bold black lines, solid colors. So that's probably the biggest thing that influenced, because when you're doing it, like, all like every day for a year, it starts to influence your work.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right?
Like it creeps in.
Yeah. And, but it's been a while since I've actually done that, but it's still, that's probably the first, like where I was really doing that as a job, and then the cool thing is that this place we got to, the printers were on site. So we really got the firsthand CMYK, like induction basically, because you could see how the printers were working. And that's the interesting thing about like the offset print. They have to like calibrate all of the inks. So they would basically set up, you'd have a job, look, whatever they're doing. Let's say they're doing 1,000 copies. Well, they might have to take 100 copies at the beginning of that run just to get the colors right. Now, obviously, the better the guys were, the less it would make. But that's why a lot of the times you get those jobs where you're like, okay, I want to buy 50 postcards, right? But if you would have bought 500 postcards, it's cheaper, depending on the print, that's because like all of those extra prints kind of disappear. Like that's why you get like the poster bundles where all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, 500 let's say 500 posters are $800, but 1,000 posters is $850, right? So you have to kind of find those things. But of course, who wants to have, if you didn't sell them, like, have a closet full of posters that like, I like them, so what can we do with them? Well, give them away. At a certain point, it becomes like, oh, if you buy one of these, you get one of these.
Yeah. You were talking about that at the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah, bundling.
Yeah, like what is it like sustaining yourself as an artist, and how do you promote your artwork?
So the big ways of promoting right now, and that's what I have to get back into, is the making sure that I'm posting the YouTube on a consistent basis. My website's updated, so I have to get the blog posting the blog on a consistent basis. So because I have to find, so I have fans, and I have fans that are great fans too, but I might only interact with them at these different game conventions currently.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to kind of get into a position where, ideally people would like not go to Facebook and see my post. They would basically go, oh, let's go check out Joe's blog on his website, joeabboreno.com. Selfless, self-promotion, shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
But so those are the big things. And then I need to get my email list. That's going to be a priority this year, getting myself an email list where I can say, hey, have you seen X, Y, and Z? Look at this new series I'm doing. If you like this, you might like this, that kind of thing. So that I can interact more. I think YouTube's got a community channel, a community tab that I need to be. So I think I have access to it. I just have to kind of get back into it and like basically promote myself through that. Cause I think they said, I've seen things where YouTube might be like, I want to say like the number one search engine in the, besides like Google and stuff. I mean, it is Google. So it's, so maybe there's like a little bit of like bending the story a little bit to fit your narrative. But,
sure.
But, I mean, there's so many people that just go to YouTube to search for X, Y, and Z.
I mean, YouTube will just teach you how to build a house.
Right.
Yeah,
and any kind of house, any style of house, any kind of thing. Like, oh, well, I want to find out how to do this. So people go to YouTube first.
Yep.
And then, so if I can get kind of like found that, like, I don't have a lot of fans yet, but that's partly because, I haven't been consistent about posting.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So hopefully I can do that. I want to be able to share my fun with people.
Uh-huh.
I think that, that's my big reason for like doing what I do, is that it's fun for me.
And talking about the fun, like, what's your creative process like? Like, how do you get your engine running? Like, how do you get yourself started?
So,
what's your process?
It depends on what I'm working on. So some of it is, like I'll just basically get up in the morning, make some coffee, sit down with my sketchbook, and then just start doodling and just kind of let it go. Just see what develops. Like I'll have a couple series, we'll do certain things. For other stuff, so I do these things. They're dice trays. So I don't know if you're familiar with what that is for a role playing game. Basically, for the ones I use actually are flat, and then the corners pinch in so that you've got a place so your dice don't go flying off the table. So you can roll into this little dish basically. And I hand paint those with acrylics. I use the Posca pens, and then coat them with gloss acrylic varnish. But for those, I kind of have worked through some of them on pencil, but then now I've done them enough that I'll work through them on the actual dice tray itself. And when I need to be creative with those, I kind of just put on some good music, put on a good movie, or one or the other. Not at the same time, because that would be, I have probably done it at the same time, but it's crazy. Anyway, too much input, right?
Yeah.
But and then I'll just start with I'll use a white marker, and I'll just start kind of scribbling on things. Like I know, okay, this one's going to be an explosion, so I'll make the explosion. And then I kind of go through the process of like, okay, now I've got 12 out here. And now let's see, okay, let's start working on finishing them. So I've got a bulk of 12, and then it'll be like, okay, let me do X, Y, and Z and keep going. And then like those are on the side drying, and then get in the next 2 or 3, get those on the side drying, so that everything's kind of like I'm just kind of working and with those. It feels a little bit like an assembly line, but it's not quite an assembly line. So I did that, and so I started doing that same kind of rhythm with 10 by 10 inch paintings. So, and with those do start more with the pencil sketch, where I'm kind of thinking like, okay, what do I want to have on this? Like I did, I've got some pretty cool, like small skulls that are pretty detailed in terms of like the physical object to look at. Right. And I'll draw from this. So there's a guy on YouTube, his name is Proko, I think, Proko. He came up with this skull, this little mini skull, and it's got a camera mount in the back, so you can put on a little tripod, and then you can turn the angle so you can really get like the different angles of the skull and kind of see that kind of stuff. And so I can put that in different angles, and that's what I'll do for like that. I'll draw those, and then so I've got one now that I put Groucho Marx glasses on, and it's instead of a cigar, it's a kazoo.
Okay.
And so I'm going to kind of go through a couple series like that, where just kind of playing around with some different skulls and things like that. So, because, I mean, I don't know, there's something about like the, I don't know, something about like the life-death thing.
Well, I mean, Mexicans are all about it.
Right,
man.
right. And I don't, so, and you bring that up, but since I've been doing that, there's a lot more, I do get a lot of Mexicans that stop at my booth. I haven't sold a lot yet, but I think that it could be for lots of reasons. But there is like a painting that I want to, there's like a couple paintings that I want to do now with like that kind of stuff. So, it is, the one I'm really kind of working through, I'm doing a lot of pencil sketches of. So, Santa Muerte.
Yeah.
So, she just is like, there's so many, like for one, they're just cool. Like before you kind of get into the religious mythology of the character, it's like, it's just so kind of, it's just this interesting thing. Like for me, the Grim Reaper was like, oh, you see it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, Grim Reaper with angel wings and then like colorful outfits or dresses and stuff. It takes a while to make the shift from male to female.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just like this thing. And then I've done a couple, I did a dice tray where it's a skull and just kind of feel the flowers. I actually have that painting. It's going to be up in the next show at the Elmhurst Art Guild. I called it Life, Death, Whatever It Takes.
Okay. Because
it's kind of this juxtaposition between that life and death and what it is.
Yeah.
And So,
which is interesting
yeah.
because like when you look at the art that you create is like very colorful, like, you know what I'm saying, and then you have the grim part of it. So there's like a balance.
I think that's like some of my cartoons. Like when somebody said like, "Why are you so good at drawing ugly stuff?" Like ugly. Then I like realized, oh wait, but like on purposely ugly, like not just that it's ugly, but like
aesthetically
people that
ugly,
are like yeah. I had a web comic for a while that I called Crackpot Uglies, like basically these crazy people that are just ugly, but they're I like that's kind of what we are. Well, like all of us, we all have our flaws. We all have our little like things that make us who we are, right? It's not necessarily like, oh, well, maybe for some people, like you get like Brad Pitt, like he because of the way he looks, he's a certain way, or Angelina Jolie, like right because like the way they look. But for us, it's like, oh well, we're this, we do this, these are our like. There was a comic book called Warts and All, where that's kind of what it is like for us. Like I think that's what it is about drawing like the ugly fun things, right? Funny things I'd like my artwork to like inspire somebody to smile or laugh, or to be like to get that part out of it. Even though like I have some of these ideas that might end up being darker, like I still want there to be like this lighthearted thing. And I think that's why I think like She's So Cool, Santa Muerte is so cool, is because of that. Like here's this death, but then there's like, there's definitely like something else there, like this like rebirth, this like there's yes, they've passed on, but we can celebrate the great things about them. I think
it's El Día de los Muertos, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
The Day of the Dead.
And I think like you'll know more, you get it more than I do. Like I'm definitely coming into this like late to the party, right? But I mean I think that's what it is about the what is the altar called, the for Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah, the ofrenda.
Ofrenda. So like that is like that's something that we talk about in my family. Like, oh, it'd be great to do that this year for stuff because we have we all have had people that we love pass on.
Yeah.
And remembering the good things about people
exactly
is like huge, especially for getting over grief and stuff. Like you just don't realize it until you do it, or at least once, or even in your head. And then you're like, so like for my grandmother that lived above us on the second floor,
the one that used to walk you to school.
Well, yeah, she didn't really walk us to school. That was the thing, because she had really bad arthritis, so she didn't move around real well.
But yeah, that grandma.
Yeah. But she had this thing where she did this little soft shoe shuffle where like, she's dancing, but like not really moving that much because she's arthritic and, but like, that's like kind of after she passed, like that's the image that kind of goes through my head of like, of her and like what she was about. Like, okay, here's this, yep, everything's going, but let's do a little shuffle dance. Right.
No, I mean that's what life is about. So the Dia de los Muertos is like you'll see what do you call it, Jose Guadalupe Posada's book there, which is like he came up with the Catrina, right? The Catrina was and it's appropriate for this time period. Right? It was during the time when Porfirio Diaz was the president of Mexico and became a dictator. Took over the country through force, and what Jose Guadalupe Posada did was he made this woman that has this really floral hat. You've seen her, right?
I'm sure I've seen it, yeah.
And so it's like a real famous image of that the printmaker Jose Guadalupe Posada made. And the reason why he made it was he was saying that no matter how wealthy you are, we're all gonna die. Yeah. Right? Like you can't take that to the grave. So we're all equal, in that sense. And so the Day of the Dead, or El Día de los Muertos, is really about what you said, right? Like celebrating the positive things of that your ancestors or the people who have passed away contributed. Like when you talked about your grandmother's shuffle, what I thought about was like my mom was a really funny lady. She'd be real serious, but then she'd be like so funny that you would laugh with her.
Yeah.
One day we were going to my uncle's house for Thanksgiving or something. It was like a family holiday.
Yeah.
And she rang the doorbell, and I don't know if they didn't put salt on the concrete in front of their house.
Right.
But she slipped.
Oh, man.
She slipped right on after ringing the doorbell, she slipped. And so my aunt or uncle opened up the door and saw her on the floor, and she just started breakdancing, like pretending like she was breakdancing on the floor.
Nice.
Got up and then walked in, and she was just like, "What?" And I'm behind her, like, I can't believe what I'm seeing right now. Like everybody's laughing.
Yeah, because
so,
they're like, "Oh my gosh, should we have to take her to the hospital because of a hip?" Right? Oh man.
And so she was like a funny lady like that.
Yeah.
But it's really about celebrating the positive things, like remembering the good memories.
Yeah. Right.
How do you keep your stamina throughout the process, right? So, like, when I painted this mural at when I met you, right? At the boxing club. It first started out, and it happens to me all the time, right? It's like you have to work through it. My process is like, the idea is like, oh, I got the idea.
Yeah.
And you sketch it out. You have it on the wall.
Right.
Then you start working it, and then it becomes work.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, my arm's tired. My arm's getting fatigued. And then how do you work through your process to get to the point where you're just like, I finally finished?
So the first thing I guess we'll starts with the sketch, getting that approved by the client, the person who owns the wall, whatever it is, right? Once you get it to the point where you're like, you've put it up on the wall, and let's say like post doodle grid, you've got it it's all basically outlined out, and then it becomes just paint by number at that point, right? But it's a big paint by number, right? At that point, it does feel like a job to me, but I think I work it like a job. Yeah. So then at that point and I think that's what gets me through it. Like, okay, well, I want to be there. I want to start at 7:00 in the morning. And without the outdoor murals, that's easy to do, right? Actually, the one inside mural I was able to do was easy then too, because the building was under construction. So I was able to show up like when the workers were showing up. Right?
Yeah, like super early in the morning.
Yeah, I like to be. I'm an early riser. I like the light. I like the sunlight. I like that stuff. And so I'll start early, and then at that point, I basically think to myself, okay, well, 7 to 3:30 is about an 8-hour day, 7 to 3 with a break. But I'll just keep working. I'm not. I think that's one of the things where I'm not hungry. Making sure I have coffee, making sure I have like electrolytes and stuff to drink for being outside. Mm-hmm. But I'll just keep working. A couple bathroom breaks, and then I'll just work until, okay, well, it's time in the afternoon. I get to a point where I'm like really tired because I give myself a hard time. Like, oh, well, you should keep working, and there's still sun, right? There's still sunlight. Then at the same time, you're like, you just worked 8 hours, or this is going to be a 10-hour day. There's reasons why we have 8-hour work days, right? Yeah. And so I'll just kind of keep working it. And then with the one on North Avenue, I was kind of lucky because there were a couple of rain days, right? And so because there were a couple of rain days, I had kind of this forced, hey, you have to take a break, right? Whereas like I don't have that in my head, like where I'm thinking, oh, I gotta have a day off. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna work on this until it's done. Yeah. And I get to that. I think I do that with my smaller paintings too, where like if I don't work on it till it's done, or at least to a point where I know like, okay, I can pick up tomorrow from a point, then so for those, when I was saying that those shows with my dad, I did a bunch of 10x10s and some 11x14s. And I kind of went through that whole thing where like I only have like 8 going at the same time. Well, at a certain point, I'm like, okay, well, this is all I can get done for the show. So I've had like 3 or 4 canvases that are like half done sitting on the side because I just haven't had time to get back to them. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have this thing where I have to like push myself to work through a thing and to finish. And that's just, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if I want to say it's like lucky that I have that, or if it's just, a work ethic thing that I've just kind of had like instilled in me because of my parents being teachers and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just have to, I just grind it out, but it becomes like, it's not work, cause I am having fun. Right. So it's work in that I know what I know that this needs to be done, and the sooner I can get it done, like the better. So with that mural, it's actually the North Avenue mural again. Like this is where like that part of my process like really isn't great for my health,
Yeah.
And so well, nothing bad happened, but so the bottom is basically all of these little flowers, like it's a field of like there are abstract flowers, but there's still like a field of them.
Sure.
So and that wall, I don't know what it might be, like 100 feet long. I don't know. I'm trying to think what it would be, and maybe 60 feet long. I'm trying to think in terms of like so maybe it's the whole front of the building is 60 feet. So you've got it broken up into two 30-foot sections.
Sure.
I started painting that stuff. So basically what I have is I'm sitting in a lawn chair, and I've got a bucket. I have like a bin in front of me with like 6 to 8 different colors, like different light colors and the different pinks and oranges and stuff. So I can paint these flowers. So I start painting them about 9 a.m, and I'm kind of going through switching brushes, switching different colors, but it's like finishing a section. And then I kind of scooch down, like hop and scooch down with my lawn chair, keep going, right? About 11 o'clock, I thought, oh, cool, I'm almost done, because I'm almost to the middle point, and I feel like I've got my groove.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, okay, so I'll be able to finish this today. So, and then at 2 o'clock, I've gotten to the other side of the opening, and I'm thinking, oh, cool, I'm almost done. And I'm just painting away. I'm like, almost done. 3 o'clock, all right, I'm almost done. 4 o'clock, I'm almost done. And I'm starting to
You're
really
motivating yourself.
I'm burning myself out. I'm getting exhausted because I'm not taking any breaks because I'm almost done.
Yes.
Right. And then I think like the street lights might have popped on, and I finally was done.
Yeah, that's like
it was like 6:30 or 7. I'm like, okay, I'm really tired.
Yeah, but I think you know what? Coming back to the cookies.
Yeah.
When we were talking about the cookies and like having that bag of cookies open.
Oh, right.
And eating all the cookies. I think that may have something to do with let's just get this done.
Yeah, maybe.
Because addictive personalities, which is something that I have, is like if I set out to do something, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
No matter what.
You know what? I mean, I can see that too, because some part of me is like, okay, well, these cookies are here and they're open. I'm gonna make sure they're not there tomorrow, right? So like, okay, let me try and reduce the impact of this thing being around for a whole week by just scarfing them all down and being done with it, right?
Man, I did that too, man. Like my uncle brought crescent cookies home to my mom.
Oh man.
Like dropped some crescent cookies to my mom, and we ran into my uncle maybe like a week later, and my uncle was like, "Hey, what'd you think of the cookies?" And my mom was like, "What cookies?"
Oh.
Man, I got in trouble.
Oh, sure.
Ooh,
you got at least leave one.
Ooh, man. But that's when that should have been like a red flag. Like, hey, man, like your personality is a little different. But the one thing that's positive about that type of personality is that you get stuff done.
Yeah.
If I set out, like I just had some work done and I need to patch something up, like I'm getting all my tools ready to get it done. But like the moment I set out to do it, it's going to get done.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have to figure it out.
Right.
I'm going to put myself in a situation where it's like, there's no going back now.
Right. I'll figure stuff out. That's something I say to myself all the time. Oh, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll figure out what's going to happen.
So I think that there's a correlation between that type of personality and being able to like be an artist and be successful and get stuff done.
Yeah. I hope so.
I'm putting it out there in the world.
Well, I just because, like I said, I'm kind of in that I don't want to say crossroads, but I'm at that point where like, okay, well, this stuff's gotta, like, I got to start making money, or I got to start making enough so that I can get back out on my own, right? Because that's like, being out on my own, owning a house for a while, working full time, paying for it, but then kind of struggling because like the salary I was getting just wasn't moving in line with inflation and stuff. So at a certain point, it's like, oh, let me put this on my credit card. And then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of credit cards, right?
Yeah.
And a house. And so like, I want to get back to the point where like I got things on my own without the debt.
Sure.
right. The debt's something I can leave that. I'd
Sure.
like to leave that away, but continuing through like that kind of stuff, just being able to, sell the work, like working hard and having it, and that is happening. Right. So, cause there are people where you're like have repeat customers and stuff like that.
And what's your strategy? Like how do you tackle like getting yourself out there? Like, how do you get the commissions? How do you tap into the shows and to the networking?
Yes. Some of the shows I know about just because of like, word of mouth, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And actually it's mostly word of mouth. Like, okay, try this show out, try that show out. Like even I said like the murals and stuff. So I think I have to, like, one of the things like for this year is being a little bit more proactive in like in seeking those things out.
Sure.
Right. I've been lucky that my stuff is good enough for people to say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you do this? And it's like, okay, well, if it's going to work feasibly, like, cause I've had some things where I've been like, well, I'm probably not going to do that show because I know it takes 2 hours to set up, and then I'm not sure how much I'm going to make, and it costs this much, and then it's going to take 2 hours to break it down. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
you're
the reward.
Some of the different art shows where you think, okay, well, let me try this, but then it's like too high of an entry point in terms of time and stuff too. And it might have something to do too with what else is going on. So I don't tend to say no too often, but when I do say no, that's generally because of that. Like, it's going to be not so much hard to do mentally, but more hard to do, like, physically do this plus the other things I've got going on. Right.
And you said that you work with the Oak Park Art Council, or
yeah. So the Oak Park Arts Council has been good because like they know the quality of my work, because
Sure.
now I've done 4 of their mini murals. They have the mini mural program, which anybody can do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to I think it might be the Oak Park Area Arts Council.org, I think.
Okay.
But they have a mini mural thing, and I believe the first stuff will go out for that like in March.
Cool.
So and they'll put it out there, and basically you submit like up to 3 works, and then they put it to a committee to see like, okay, what are the ones we want to have done. And they do it twice a year. So they do one that should start in like May, and then another one that's like in June. So that in terms of like when you can start, when you get approved, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And that stipend just went up. I think it's like $1,500. So for this 8x12, and then you're responsible for all your materials and everything. The only thing you don't have to do is prime the surface. And then what else is there? Oh, and they basically give it to you in halves. So you get the first half, when you're approved, and then that way you can buy your supplies and stuff. And then once you're done, you get the second half.
Okay.
So, but that's anybody. You don't have to be like local Oak Park. You can be, anywhere in the United States, probably anywhere. But, I think I know of people that are like from Texas and come down from Wisconsin, that kind of thing.
What are some of the hardships? I mean, you kind of talked about it, right? Like some of the hardships that have helped you, guide you to this point. Like what some of those like learned lessons that you were just like, man, they really taught me to this point.
Oh, I think so. If we went back to like go back to talking about like being bullied and stuff like that, it's the being nice. Like being nice to people is going to be 90% of the way to get someplace, I think. Just being nice and being respectful. Nice, interacting with people, though I think one of the hardest things for me to do sometimes is remember somebody's name. Right? I know you meet somebody and you're like, oh, I mean, but if you can overcome that, like that's pretty huge. Like one of those huge things, like that's a skill that you can develop. And I was doing something once and I can't even remember what I was doing. Like I was starting to be able to do it. Like, oh my gosh, I remember I think there's a method where you either repeat the person's name kind of right away, and then you do something else. There's like another little Jedi mind trick that you do to yourself.
Yeah, like a mnemonic device.
Right. Kinda. This was more of, I think, so that you're repeating it to yourself or you're repeating it in conversation. You don't want to do it too much because then it starts to sound weird.
Yeah.
Like, if, so if I said, Jesus, well, what do you think about this, Jesus? What do you think? This is good water, Jesus. If you start saying it all the time,
Yeah.
I knew somebody, a salesman that did that.
Yeah.
And it gets weird,
Yeah.
like real fast. But if you remember it, like just, you're able to say, and sometimes too, you have the problem of like, you're not expecting to see the person and then your mind just goes completely blank with what their name is. And that happened to me once recently at an art fair, like where this guy that I knew in high school and some in college, like he stopped by, but I wasn't expecting him. And like, I couldn't remember his name and it was a nightmare. Like, because I could tell it bothered him. Right. And like,
you didn't know his name?
Yeah. Like I really felt bad. And then finally when he said it, like, oh yeah, it's like, but you feel terrible. But I mean, I'll do that to some, usually you can get away with it if you've seen the person a lot. Cause it's like, hey, how you doing? Oh, that's great. You just kind of overcome the name, like in the process of the beginning of the conversation. Cause you're happy to see the person and maybe you have a conversation you had recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's, I think being nice, trying to remember people's names as best you can, but if you're polite and nice, I mean, that's going to get you, I mean, I don't know. I think the world would be a better place if we could just remember that. Like, if somebody's mean or rude to you, it might just, they're having a bad day. We like nowadays, I mean, I think a lot of us are having bad days. So
no, I think that that's something that I try to live by is like being nice. When I was a teacher, I worked at a school and we used to have open lunch. And so we went to a Chinese restaurant for open lunch as like an advisory.
Okay.
And there was a woman that was waiting for her food and was being very belligerent, swearing at the person.
Oh,
and
man.
Just being like, I've been waiting here for blah, 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 beep, 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 beep. Like, when's my food going to come out, right? And so, my whole advisory, like 6-7 kids ordered their food. They all got their food except for me. And it was like time to go back. And so it was just like, I need my food, right? So I asked the person, I was like, yo, how you doing? We've been waiting a little while and, is my food going to come out? Like, do you know when it would come out? So the person at the front said something in Chinese. The person in the back said something in Chinese and said, oh yeah, your crab rangoon is going to take a little while, but you should be out in like 5 minutes. And then the person that was waiting for a really long time was super angry that this person was responding to me. But the reason why he was responding was because I was being nice.
Yeah.
Right. And so being nice is like the first step to anything is dignity, right? Like
right.
You give people dignity.
Right. Treat people how you want to be treated.
Exactly.
And then that's the thing too, you're in that situation where, okay, your food's taking a little bit longer, but I mean, it's just, I don't know, but it's like like this person's not understanding that it's probably lunch hour, right? Mm-hmm. So the crew in the back are probably like swamped with stuff. And so it's like, okay, I guess that person's never worked at a food service place, right? Like, oh, lunch. Yeah. Lunch is going to be crowded. Lunch is might take a little bit longer. Yeah. But that's usually why they have like a smaller serving or they have a set items, right? You have a lunch menu because they, only have time to cook these 4 things.
And that was a really good thing because it was an advisory and we were actually able to break down that interaction and be like, hey, so what happened?
Yeah.
And why do you think people were responding in certain ways? And it was just like, it was really a good conversation that we had where it's just like, yo, just be nice to people and people will be nice to you.
Yeah.
So if you had any advice to give somebody that was going to become an artist or wanted to dedicate their life to art, to making artwork as a living or just as a person, like what would you advise them?
So I think, and some of these things I feel like are things I need to do still too.
Yeah. We talk to each other all the time.
So I think it would be
talk to ourselves. I should say.
Yeah. So one of the things would be to share more of what you're doing with people. Not be afraid, or I shouldn't say not be afraid, because you're going to have people comment on your stuff. They're going to say, there are going to be people that say terrible things. You just have to get to the point where you don't care.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes the hardest ones are when it's like, somebody that you know and love, when they have the comment and it's like, ew, those are the hardest ones to get over. But then you have to remember, like, I'm making this for me, not for you.
Yeah.
And then once you can kind of get that into your head, then I think you kind of can overcome a lot of that stuff. Somebody could have somebody that they're really close to, whose opinion they really value.
Sure.
Basically say, well, why are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you can get to the point where you can just, in your head, you don't have to necessarily even have an answer for that. Like, why would you paint like that? You just have to be able to say to yourself, like, oh, I painted it for me. I did it because it makes me feel good. I don't really care what that person feels like. I'm going to find my audience.
Sure.
And by sharing your stuff and putting it out there, the more you can do that, the more you're going to have people, especially nowadays. Like when I started out, you didn't really have, there wasn't an internet.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have that option of like, oh, can I have a fan that lives on the other side of the world?
Sure.
Right. That wasn't an option really. I mean, I guess it could have been an option, but it'd have to be like, you'd have to be in a gallery that is being promoted at like a big place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whereas now you could essentially have a YouTube channel and then build an audience.
Sure.
And then the other thing I would say is, draw a lot, draw everything, draw what you see, draw what you don't see, draw from your imagination, the more you can draw, I think the more that can apply to the things you want to create, because no matter what, everything has some kind of basis in drawing. So and then design too. I think design is pretty important in terms of making something that looks nice, that has a good aesthetic to it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, because the drawing is going to even transfer over to sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think with sculpture, though, you could get to a point where you have certain kinds of clay, because nowadays there's some like better clays where you could kind of sketch with clay.
Mm.
But I mean, I can always have a notebook with me, which I don't today, but you can always have a notebook and a pencil or a pen and be able to draw down, like, even if it's just, like, I want to write down my idea. I think those are important. So like, I guess a sketchbook is another very important thing to have. So sketchbooks, drawing, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there and, keep trying, and then try and keep your headspace healthy.
Yeah.
Pick up that High Five book by Mel Robbins. Cause
I follow her podcast. Her podcast is really good.
Yeah. But that, I read her first I read her 5-second rule book, and that helped a little bit. But the High Five habit was crazy. Like, I mean, just in terms of how it really affected me. That doesn't, I mean, it's not necessarily going to affect everybody that way, but it was huge for me.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah.
And then, what do you wish to leave with your art?
Well, I hope that, like, after I'm gone, people can look at stuff and say, like, what was this guy thinking?
Nice.
No, I want somebody, I don't want it to be that weird in terms of like I think don't understand it, but I want people to, I want it to bring a smile to people's face.
Yeah. I
want people to be like, oh, this is, I really enjoy this. And, I'm glad it's here. Right. Like, I'm glad that this is like, I'm glad he made this, because like, I can remember, like, oh, remember that time, like, maybe it's not even something about, it wouldn't be necessarily something about me, because it's the person is interpreting the art. Right. So it's like, okay, well, this field of flowers and all the colors, that reminds me of, when I was a kid and I was walking with my parents or my grandma, or, it reminds me of like fresh baked cookies, whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the things I think I would want to leave, to make sure people say like, oh, these are fun, like, what was this guy thinking? What was he going through? What was he learning?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would want to leave behind.
No, yeah, and I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for being so open when I approached you. Like I had kept on passing by while you were painting.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm painting a mural as well at the same time, right? And so I was just like, let me stop by and say what's up.
I think that's I'm glad you felt that way. I felt we had a good conversation too. But I think that's something as artists that we kind of need to embrace a little bit is, we're not in competition with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it might feel that way, especially if you're like both submitting art to a contest, right?
Mhm.
But in general, like the better you get, the better I can get.
Sure.
Because like, you know what, it might be this thing like, okay, well now you've painted this mural, and then you might come back to me and say, oh, the surface, this X, Y, and Z, there was something wrong with it. Like you should probably remember when you're doing it to, it could, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
And so the more I can learn, the more I can teach, the more I can share, like the more like that comes back to me.
Yeah.
Right. With stuff, with whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I thought that was great, but I think, artists, like we, maybe it's like forming our own union kind of thing.
Sure.
Like, I think, and sometimes it's hard. Like you cause you might look at some art and you might think to yourself, like, I don't get it, but, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I think, I don't know if I can think of too much bad art. I mean, maybe it's just something that I think
you don't understand.
Well, either you don't understand or it evokes a feeling that's negative. If you create something like specifically to like do harm or something, that's bad art to me.
Sure.
Right. Specifically to like evoke like terror or, well, that's not even true too, because horror movies are great, but in their everyday lives, I guess would be a thing. Like,
sure. Like it's a gift that you have, right? You have
right.
a gift to be able to create something that people can understand and feel.
Right.
And if you're creating something that's going to damage or going to harm somebody,
right,
then you're using your gifts in the wrong way.
Right.
Because your gift should be to relate in some way.
Right.
In a good way.
Yeah. I'd like to, promote stuff as like making the world a better place, Like, I think I've had a thing for a while, like, smile early, smile often. The more reasons you can give somebody to smile, it'll come back to you. Like if you give somebody a reason to smile, you might get to smile too. It happens automatically. Like you smile at somebody and you're like, it's hard to not smile back.
Yeah.
Right. And, so like that's that kind of stuff, like just in terms of making the world a better place.
For sure.
And it's going to be hard for a while, in terms of, current events,
man, I'm telling you,
and
I've tried to get rid of like all that stuff from my algorithm.
Yeah.
Cause it's just like,
it's hard to do.
The media is pumping it out because they're getting views through this.
Right. Right.
Everybody's using everybody right now.
Yeah. And the hardest thing is that we don't get shown things that we have in common with people. We're just shown the stuff that like we have that aren't we don't have in common.
Sure.
Right. So you have I don't know. Basically, it's like you two warring factions, and then you find out like, well, neither one really cares about me. So then you're like, well, where do I go from here? And it's like, I don't know. So maybe I just need to, go on more podcasts and talk with more good people, and that's the kind of thing where you can just sit down and have a good conversation. And the more we can do that, like that's where we're going to be like, I think in better shape.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have much more in common than we do not.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that we don't have in common are things that have been fabricated for us to be divided.
Yeah, right. Right.
It's divide and conquer, right? Like,
yeah.
All of us want to have a good livelihood. All of us want our families to thrive. All of us want our families to feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're able to come to terms with that, then, you're able to build something with somebody that you might not because of how they look or how they speak or.
Yeah. There might be things we disagree about, but if we can have a good conversation and have it be civil, respect each other.
For sure.
We're going to be better off. It's just going to be, everything better. So we just got to make people smile, and, I don't know, just try and have, I don't know, good conversations, have fun, make people laugh, make people smile, hold the doors for people, help people out, Do you see somebody needs help? If you can help them,
Yeah.
you know?
No, and I definitely felt that. I appreciate that. I mean, I know that, you know, I'm venturing off into this quest of being a professional artist. And so it was refreshing to be able to have somebody to answer questions that usually people are like, I'm not going to tell you that. Like, this is, you know, they're guarded.
Yeah.
And you weren't guarded at all. You were just like, hey, this is how much I charge for this. This is how much I charge for this. This is how much I'm getting paid for this. Like, make sure that you do this.
Yeah, I think all of that is because I also had somebody that was really good and nice to me that in that same way. Alex Cruz, he's a muralist. He's a really great muralist. He's done a ton of them. So, but he was that way with me, and so I was like, well, I'm not gonna hoard this stuff. You can't hoard the information that somebody else is giving you, right? It's like I can't even think of an example, but it's just wrong.
No, and
right?
in the program, we're told that the only way that you can keep it is by giving it away.
Yeah. The more, because like you said, the more I, can pass to you, the more like, at some point, who knows what just being in this, in your studio, in your podcast, this is pretty inspiring. I don't have the space to do it, but like knowing like what are all the tools it takes to do this and having a conversation like this, probably something I couldn't have done, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
well,
pretty cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you too.
Joe,
thank you.
Man,
this is great. This has been great.
I'm glad that you made it out to the 500 and Growing podcast.
Me too.
And with that, 500andgrowing.com is, how can people reach you?
So the best way is joeabboreno.com, joeabboreno.com. That's my website, and that's the stuff where I gotta get better at putting the blog up and stuff. But everything's there. I'm working on putting things for sale there, but that's a good way. Otherwise, social media is just Joe Abboreno, like at Instagram. I believe you can find my YouTube channel that way too.
Okay. So
that's another thing I got to get back in the habit of doing.
Okay.
But
cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we're 500 and Growing. You could go to 500andgrowing.com for more creative content. We're also produced by Where You At Productions. Where You At Productions is a production company that's mobile that helps people's voices be amplified. So you can amplify your voice as far as like why you do what you do, connect with your consumers, with your fans, with people who want to know how you're growing. And please reach out to whereyouatproductions.com. And thank you very much, Joe Abboreno, for coming to the 500 and Growing podcast. And thank you.
Thank you, Jesus.
500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Dedicated to your craft, read and study the math. Making goals and taking a stand. Original, so you trailblaze a path. In tune with your inner master plan.
Visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
Thank you very much for listening to the 500 and Growing podcast. Remember that we have incredible guests that have already featured in episodes in the past. So please go back into the archives and listen to their inspirational stories. And then remember that we have incredible guests lined up for the future. So please follow on Instagram at 500 and Growing Podcast. Remember to follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the major podcast platforms. You can also check out 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
500 and growing.